In this episode of OG55, I am joined by Jay Sherer and George the Italiano as we talk about Tinkerbell, her meet and greet being removed from the Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World. What's that indicative of? Is it political? Is it something else? We're going to talk about it, break it down up next on this episode of OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. We have a fantastic show prepared for you today. But before we dive into our topic at hand, I want to introduce my fantastic panel, George the Italiano. Welcome back, sir. It's been a really long time since I've seen you.
It's been too long. I can't even count the days how long it's been since I've been off the show.
It hasn't been days. It's been like 6 hours.
About, yes. But it's going good. I love having these deep dive conversations with everybody, and
Absolutely.
No matter how spicy it gets, I'm always, up for, again, like in-depth conversations. And it's always a good time on Orange Grove 55.
Absolutely. If you let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, George.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely. And down below, we got the one, the only Mr. Jay Sherer. Jay, we usually bring you on for studio stuff. You have that great show, Story Geeks, and How Stories Work. But I love bringing you on to talk theme parks. I
love coming on to talk about theme parks, too.
Plus, there was no one else available.
Yeah. Bubba couldn't make it. Slimer couldn't make it. You guys like, where do we go next? I guess we got to go to the B team.
Could be a squad.
Pull him off the bench.
You pull him off the bench
to go.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, this is 2 times in 1 week that I've been on the show, which is phenomenal. I love being on the show. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the show we did like a couple weeks ago where we talked about Universal and Tram Tour and all that. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's great. It's great having you on, Jay. If you could just let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me over on How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. I just hit 2,500 subscribers over there, which is cool. Nice. And 3 of my last 4 videos are all explaining films. There's a Sicario, there's The Killer, and there is Dune, the first Dune, and
Nice.
those 3 videos have all hit over 1,000 views. So I felt pretty good about that. I need to do another video. I haven't done a long one in a long time, but you can catch me over there when I'm able to do a video. I'm going to try to do another video pretty soon. And other than that, I'm not really on X all that much. If we do a show, I'll like retweet it and stuff like that. But you can catch me on Instagram if you just search for my name over there. You can catch me on Instagram if you want to catch me on Instagram.
Instagram seems more fun because it's like little dog videos and like it's just a good time over there. It's a little different.
Yeah. And one thing I don't like about Instagram, and this is a whole discussion we could have a whole show on.
Yeah.
Because it does relate to Disney in some ways too. But Instagram is kind of one of those things that it's so curated that it's like, it actually, I think, it can give people depression and anxiety for the opposite reasons of Twitter. Like Twitter is a cesspool of anxiety and depression and like, you're an idiot and you're an idiot. No, wait a minute, you're an idiot, But Instagram is almost like the thing I don't have, because people don't share, like, they don't tend to share like what bad happened to them in the week. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Like, look at this great thing I did. I went to Disney again, like, okay, cool. But I didn't see the fact that your bank account's drained. You know what I mean? Like, so it's I think that Instagram has its own, but you're right. It's much easier to deal with. It's much more palpable, and you can catch me over there.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's dive right into this topic. This is fascinating stuff. This is from thestreet.com, financial website, thestreet.com. Disney World cuts classic character from meet and greets amid scrutiny. Disney World has subtly confirmed that the character will not be returning for meet and greets anytime soon. Now, it says here, Disney World has quietly axed one of its classic characters from doing meet and greets at the park. which is a move that comes after the character was flagged internally for its controversial portrayal in films. Tinkerbell, a character from Disney's 1953 film Peter Pan, first disappeared from Disney World during the COVID pandemic, along with every other character, as closures shut down the entire resort. When the theme park reopened, Tinkerbell never came back, never returned. And now her signage has reportedly been removed from Town Square Theater at Magic Kingdom, the only location where she used to conduct meet and greets with fans. So here's the sourcing for this particular article for the street. Reportedly, so the signage is actually courtesy of Inside the Magic. Theme park fans, you know Inside the Magic. They're reporting on the
most reliable source of Disney information.
Totally, George.
Never
totally.
a clickbait headline ever.
Never
happened.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the New York Times. So the New York Times here says Tinkerbell has reportedly faced scrutiny from Disney's Stories Matter team ahead of the debut of Disney Plus in 2019. The team reportedly flagged and labeled the character to Disney executives as, quote, potentially problematic, claiming that she is body conscious and, quote, jealous of Peter Pan's attention, according to a 2022 report from the New York Times. And I don't want to share the family. I don't know if they want to be shared, so I'm going to leave that. But okay, so here are my thoughts. Then I'll go to you, George, then Jay. In my opinion, and this is just my OG's opinion, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to make like a definitive statement here at all, because I don't think there really is one to be made here. It seems even the street is kind of, it's conjecture, a lot of it, you know, kind of connecting dots and forming a viewpoint. Okay, they're going to remove Tinkerbell from the Magic Kingdom in Florida, okay? Ron DeSantis is Florida. They're going to remove her for being problematic. They're going to keep Tinkerbell and her meet and greet in California 5 days a week, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Like if the Stories Matter group, which is I think would be a company-wide thing, right? If they decided this character is problematic, it would be a company-wide situation where it would be kind of like the Song of the South situation, where it's like, okay, you know what, that's problematic, so we're retheming Tiana's on both coasts, okay? I would assume it would be a similar situation there, right? So we're not really seeing that. And we're not seeing, even in Florida, a pullback of Tinkerbell in other areas. Like she still flies with Happily Ever After, the fireworks show. I believe, George, correct me if I'm wrong, the parade over there was it's a festival of
fantasy.
And she's in that, if I'm not mistaken,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of Tinkerbell, you know? If you go over to, real quick, Disney Plus, if you want to search Tinkerbell, there's a lot of Tinkerbell over there as well. I mean, no shortage of Tinkerbell over there. And then if you want to go over to, we could also go over to Disney's most recent animated short, which is, give me just a moment, Once Upon a Studio. This is just from November, this short. I mean, she's featured in this short as well, at the very beginning, loud and clear, Tinkerbell, here she is. You know what I'm saying? I don't think this is a political statement they're making over in Florida. I think it's more, in my opinion, a cost-saving measure. I know for a fact, I've heard from a lot of people that work at Disney, these face characters where they're not wearing the big rubber masks, you know, the big rubber heads like a Mickey does. The face characters like Tinkerbell or Cinderella, they get paid more than those big rubber head cast members and performers. And I think we know, George, and you're the Citrus Corner guy. You're the Florida guy, right? Mm-hmm. Disney World is notoriously cheap. I mean, they just are. And that's why we haven't seen like a nighttime parade over there. A lot of the reason, you know, they are notoriously cheap, even cheaper than Disneyland's management. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And not to mention too, as you had pointed out, the facial characters are under a whole nother separate contract under the union for acting. So like they're on a whole nother playing field as to the full bodysuit costume characters, you know, like the big, as you call them, the big rubber heads,
the big rubber heads, you know. And so for me, and this is just my personal opinion, right? Because I'm not going to make a definitive statement on this, because I really I don't work at Disney, you know what I'm saying? I got no inside knowledge in regards to this stuff. Based on what I'm seeing, based on the fact that Tinkerbell is alive and well on Disney Plus. She's in the fireworks show. She's on the new short that just came out just back in November. She's, I don't think that's what the problem is. One more thing, and then I'll go to you, George. In the early to mid 2000s, during the John Lasseter era, they did a bunch of these Tinkerbell movies, and they really kind of reimagined her character. This is long before the woke trend, so to speak, right? They kind of reimagined her character. I mean, they kind of turned her into like a strawberry shortcake, where they really watered her down. She was a sweet little fairy. I'm a tinker, the whole thing. That's not the Tinkerbell that Mark Davis created for Peter Pan. I mean, she was spicy back then, right? So she was already going into this like years and years and years ago, already a watered down character. Most kids probably remember Tinkerbell from those Lasseter era Tinkerbell movies, more so than even the Peter Pan film itself. There isn't really much of an issue, in my opinion, of having her out there meeting guests when it's like they've already kind of reimagined her into something else anyway. So that's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. If people have other opinions, I respect that. But George, what are your thoughts? And then we'll go down to Jay.
So for me, I'm going to actually go off of what you were saying as well. And to touch upon it, actually what's happening right behind me, where she's looking in the mirror, measuring her hips, what have you. At some point in time, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to kind of like label this, but I mean,
here we go.
A lot of young girls, when they look into the mirror, they do that. They fix their hair, they that's just what, that's just what girls do, So that was a quality of Tinkerbell that set her aside from all the other kind of typical female Disney characters at that time, because the female characters that were coming up were basically princesses. She was the first kind of this girly but yet sporty, kind of spicy kind of character that basically Mark Davis kind of modeled her after Marilyn Monroe. So again, so you could even go back even further and saying, okay, well, is Marilyn Monroe problematic? I mean, if you watch a lot of her movies, there are some things that are a bit risque, but that's what made Marilyn Monroe Marilyn Monroe. These are the qualities that made Tinkerbell Tinkerbell. And I also wanted to touch upon too a lot of her mannerisms that were utilized at the time from the animators, that they brought in performers to do like live action sequences while they animated. And the very sweet Margaret Carey was the model for Tinkerbell, which she's still alive and well. She's still kicking. I'm actually friends with her on social media. I have met her at a D23 event. Very sweet woman. So I think to label this character down is not just a dishonesty and a kind of a slap in the face to the character, but everyone who was involved with this character. It's a slap in the face to Margaret Carey. It's a slap in the face to Marilyn Monroe. It's a slap in the face to Mark Davis. I mean, the brilliant animator and later on down the road, Imagineer. Yeah. He's one of Walt's 9 old men that Walt literally relied on for a lot of the female. And Mark Davis was the champion of creating these female animated charactures.
Maleficent is another one.
Maleficent.
I mean, oh my gosh.
I mean, you look at all these. I mean, he did Aurora and Maleficent, so you can see the both ends of the spectrum. And then he does a character like Tinkerbell. And it's like the guy can do it all, Yeah. But it's the quality of Tinkerbell that just sets her aside from everybody else. Because when you have one character all the same, there's nothing special about them. You want to give them their own individual personalities that separates it, because you had to have Tinkerbell in that sense, because to her, in her eyes, Wendy is a threat. Wendy is competition. And I'm sorry, you go into any high school, you will see that with every freaking girl clique out there, that it's all a bunch of competition.
Mean
It
Girls.
is what it is. Girls.
well, yeah, and that was one thing actually that actually kind of bothered me. I got to be honest with the Tinkerbell standalone films, animated films, is that they changed her personality way too much. That upset me more than the meet and greet thing, because I know the meet and greet thing. Look, the article from the article they're referencing from the New York Times, you're talking about something from 2 years ago. Disney's changed a lot from 2 years ago. When that article was published, Chapek was still the CEO. Since then, Bob Iger has come back. He's stated many times he wants to moderate this company. He does not want to get involved too heavily, too aggressively in the politics and all that stuff. Not to say they're not going to be inclusive and diverse. They absolutely are. It's just going to be a different approach where it's a little more moderate of a stance. It's not going to be maybe as aggressive with, right? So a lot's changed in 2022. So to reference a 2022 article and be like, aha, see, it was that. It's like, really? Okay, well, 2 years ago, Bob Iger said he didn't want to do gambling. And now here we are with ESPN. So it's like a lot can change.
And really quick, one more thing I want to touch upon.
Sure.
Before we move to Jay, and just as you said, I feel like in the case with Splash Mountain and Tiana's Bayou Adventure, if it was problematic, they would do it on both coasts. They will not just pick one over the other. I feel like that there's something else going on that I don't even think it's as complicated. I don't think it's as complicated as what people are saying. Honestly, what they could actually be doing is reworking her meet and greet to have her at a different location. I've been seeing a lot of Disney news articles right now that they're moving characters all over the place. They just recently moved Chippendale to a different location in one of the parks. You constantly see that. So just because they remove her from a meet and greet and nothing is posted anytime soon, or because, again, in this day and age with social media, people expect, we have to have an answer right then and there, what's going to go on. Disney may not be ready to make those announcements. They may be making a special kind of meet and greet area like Disneyland, because Disneyland, Tinkerbell has a meet and greet of a little Pixie Hollow area. They may be doing that down at Walt Disney World. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
So to jump to that conclusion to say, we're going to go back 2 to 3 years of an article and say, 2 to 3 years later, there's some sort of connection. I don't think so.
It's a reach. Regarding Chippendale news, that's just nuts, bro. That's nuts. Sorry, I had to throw a dad joke in there.
You got to be in there.
But Jay Sherer, what are your thoughts, brother?
So you guys know that I was an annual pass holder. Never been a key holder, actually, but I was an annual pass holder for over a decade. If you look at my account, I know that they stopped counting how many times you've been at 99 because I've been over 99 times, and the ticker stops, right, on how many times you've been. And I will tell you the reason I canceled my annual pass was because I was sick and tired of this Tinkerbell shit. No, I'm just kidding. No, there's no way. That's the most ridiculous statement. No one's ever said that in the history of Disney, that they're not going because Tinkerbell's offensive to them. That's so stupid. Okay, so a couple things. I want to talk about the Stories Matter group a little bit more.
Yeah.
Wait, just hold on 1 second. Just let me order my pizza.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna any show you invite me on instantly an extra half an hour.
And honestly, that's why we love you, Jay.
That's fun. I love you guys. So let's break this down. Let's talk about the character of Tinkerbell that they're saying is problematic, and then let's go back to like Stories Matter and that initiative and what it means. Okay, so let's first of all address Tinkerbell. So Tinkerbell is a character, and George was already hinting at this, so I'm just picking up on where George left off. Tinkerbell was a character. First of all, she is a fairy. She can't have a real relationship with Peter Pan. Not really, right? They can be friends, but like they're of different species even, right?
Right.
So let's just put that out there on the table. The second thing is that
although I will say though, I would pay an extra premium charge to see that be attempt.
Well, there would probably be a lot of people that would. That's an after dark event. But I think that what's happening in this, so they said there's two problems, right? One is that she's too attached to Peter Pan, and has a big crush on him that is unrequited, right? The second thing is that, what was the second thing again? Remind me of the second thing.
The body
stuff. Okay,
right.
Body stuff. So the first problem I have is that one of the reasons why Tinkerbell works in the context of that film is that she is a temptation of Peter Pan not to face reality, right? The entire concept of Peter Pan is that there is a failure to launch into adulthood from Peter. And his whole thing is, if I can just keep being a lost boy, I never have to grow up, I never have to get on with life. I saw a breakdown where I think it was Jordan Peterson or somebody who was breaking down like what it means for the crocodile to have a ticking clock and what that means for Hook, because he's going to eventually die. And it's like he as an adult is going to eventually die, and his clock is ticking down, and he's scared of this creature, right? And I thought, oh, that's a pretty good analogy of what's going on there. Well, do the same thing for a second with Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell lives in a world where she is always going to be a fairy. She only enters the real world when she's with Peter to help Peter out, to get kids to come in and be lost boys and things like that. So there's a reason for Tinkerbell to be grasping on to keep Peter Pan as a boy and not have him grow into his adulthood, right? There's a reason for that to be the case when Wendy's going to come in, and Wendy's going to be like, Peter, you can't do this forever, man. Like, you do have to grow up. Like, it's not that's part of the whole thing. And I think that there's a natural tension, like George mentioned, between those two characters. And it's a healthy tension, because do we want to teach our kids that they should just be kids for their entire lives? We're not saying that they shouldn't have an innocent view of the world and view that things should be better. But are we asking them to just be, 10-year-olds their whole life and act like 10-year-olds? No, that would be horrific for society if we asked our kids to do that, right? So the story of Peter Pan is about this guy who's having a failure to launch and wrapping himself up in this fantasy world that he eventually needs to break out of. And Wendy is one of the people that kind of draws him out and says, like, look, there's more to life than this, and there should be more to your life than this. So it's only natural that you would have an influence in that world trying to pull him back into it and trying to be like, look, pixie dust is a hell of a drug. We should keep doing this, Peter. Now, in regards to so my point is that are we saying that we have to remove any character that would be that for Peter, that would be clinging to Peter and trying to get him to stay back in his world? Are we saying that we should just erase that kind of character from the existence of film? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, of course, there's always influences in our life. That's always, I mean, isn't it kind of interesting that the thing that she uses is somewhat of a drug for people, and she's pulling Peter back into that drug use? Come on, Peter, stay with me. I've got the pixie dust for you, buddy. I mean, all of those things are things that, why would you want to remove those things from that film? Now, as a joke, now I would say that there is a cultural context that is probably missing when the whole measurement thing comes up, right? And when the body measurement thing specifically. And the cultural context that's missing here is that back in the time that this film was released, go watch some of the advertisements when this film was released. I mean, you've got, hey, the lady's got a new vacuum cleaner, right? Like, it's not like the male's got a new vacuum cleaner. It's like, look, man, we've created a new fancy vacuum cleaner for you to use because you're clearly the one that's a stay-at-home mom taking care of everything. And I think that, so I think that the body measurements thing, if you ever watch like a show like Mad Men or a show that takes place in the 50s, all of these shows have the female characters really struggling with a lot of their identity, right? Some of them they don't want to be stay-at-home moms, and they're struggling with that. They want to make sure that they look right for all the neighbors, right? This is just a joke that's playing into a lot of the ways that people felt during that time, I imagine. Right. And so to say that it's a terrible example of, maybe we need to educate our kids, or rather than just assume, because our kids might fall into the same behaviors, and we might want to educate them on, like, that she's probably too attached to Peter Pan. Like, she's having her own failure to launch because she's too attached to this guy. Yeah. But it's okay to have a character who's too attached. It's okay to have a character who's too attached. Would we want to say, hey, look, we got to, you know what? Aladdin is problematic because he's got too much of a crush on Jasmine. I mean, come on. Like, give me a break. Like, how far are you going to take it? So my problem with the Stories Matter group is that stories do matter. Stories have a gigantic impact. Our buddy Bryant Dillon and Barbara Dillon, they have an initiative of their own called Stories Matter, and they're using that as an inclusivity thing where they're bringing as many stories as they can. They are an independent comic book company. They publish a bunch of stories that people wouldn't normally be able to tell in the mass market. So stories do matter, but when we say that stories matter, we have to be a little bit more nuanced in the analysis of our stories. Do some people neglect the nuance and grasp onto characters that they probably shouldn't be grasping onto? Yes, that happens. However, if you were to strip out anything that could potentially be seen by somebody as problematic, and you were to strip that out of every story, you wouldn't be telling stories anymore.
Exactly.
The whole concept of stories is that there are characters, and characters go on arcs, and they change. And those characters become better by the end of the story, or they become worse by the end of the story. But the whole point of what we do as storytellers is to put those characters in scenarios so that we can have discussions about how that works, and we can say, man, Peter Pan is a failure to launch story. Man, Tinkerbell is somebody who's trying to keep him pulled into that life that he's living that maybe he shouldn't live anymore. So my point is that when we do these analyses, we have to do a secondary analysis and go, look, people have been kind of seeing this character incorrectly, so maybe we need to tweak that character a little bit over time or something. But we're not going to be able to make an exception for every character of all time. Not only that, but I guarantee you that 30 years from now, people will go back and watch the OG 55 show, and they'll be like, those people had crazy ideas. What in the world were they thinking? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They had a Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Like, what a crazy ride. You know, like whatever they say, whatever it comes down to, you gotta be conscientious of the stories being told at the time they were told, and that we do need to assess them, but we do need to point out where they could have been leading people astray. But there are also stories that have other meanings associated with them.
Well said, Jay. Go ahead, George.
And I was just going to say, and to your point, Jay, I mean, look at the genesis of how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I mean, if you literally follow each layer of his story as an innocent child brought into slavery, so to speak, growing up, being trained as a Jedi, seeing his mother being tortured, killing off almost like an entire sand people race, out of, his hatred, for the death of his mother, turning to the dark side to save the one he loved, killing off younglings. I mean, and if you actually go through that whole thing, it's like
tragic.
Days of Our Lives in space. It's totally. Literally. So, but again, we need to see those things happen, no matter how much a person can be uncomfortable with those situations. But that's how the story has to play out in order from a character to transition, whether good or bad, from point A to point B.
Well, and a lot of times too, you have with Tinkerbell, right? In the Peter Pan film, she's insecure about her hips, right? The measurement thing, right? But there's a lot of women or a lot of girls, young girls, that have similar insecurities. And maybe instead of looking at that scene in Tinkerbell and saying, oh, that's a problem, maybe that scene actually helps young women. Hey, you know what? I can relate to that. You know what I'm saying? That I can see where she's coming from with that. And maybe that helps someone get through that body image issue as a teenager or whatever. We don't know how people are always going to interpret that. It might not be necessarily a negative thing for a young woman. It might be something that helps that young woman get through an issue. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot going on there, with that. And I think that honestly, with the Stories Matter group, I think that 2 years ago, I think they were more of a thing than they are now. Maybe I think that it seems like, because Bob Iger has been more, like we've talked about, more he's moderating. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Not to say that the Stories Matter group isn't there. It absolutely is. If you go to the Walt Disney Company website, it's still a thing. But I think it's not as prevalent as it was before. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, Yeah,
and I think too, George uses a great example with Anakin. People wear Darth Vader shirts. Does that mean that they're in favor of killing kids? I mean, like that Anakin killed a bunch of younglings. I mean, the way that the way that these stories work is that we are drawn to a character because of their complexity. We're drawn to a character because of some of the things that they've faced that maybe we've felt in our lives. But let's just take a character that everybody looks up to. Qui-Gon Jinn was at one time seen as one of the best Jedi in the galaxy, and then people are like, if only the Jedi Council would have listened to Qui-Gon Jinn, we wouldn't have had Darth Vader. The guy showed up to a slave situation and didn't say, you know what, we're going to have to abolish slavery here, guys. No, he went, maybe I can win this kid from you, Watto, since you're a slaver, and I'm just going to be kind of okay with that and play the game. I mean, come on. What you've got to be able to be sensitive to the environment, the setting, the story that's trying to be told,
right,
the characters in that story. No character is, by the way, supposed to be perfect, and if they are, we usually reject them outright as being a dumb character.
And actually, Jay, and from you mentioning Qui-Gon, even how he used the Force to manipulate the dice roll
right,
to be able to get Anakin. So it's like if the dice would have happened to land on red for his mother, it's like, okay, I have to make sure the mother has to stay a slave in order for me to save the boy because there's something within him that needs to be saved. So it's like you can dissect every single character arc there is, and you will always find something that you can title as problematic in anything.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's why it really is a balancing act, because I think diversity is a beautiful thing. And I've been born and raised in Los Angeles, so I mean I'm around.
Sure, rub it in.
Yeah, I know. George, soon you'll be here in California. Maybe not Los Angeles, but California, right? OC. But it's a very LA is a very diverse place, and I love that. I love that I can go down the street and get Indian food. I can go this way and get Thai food. I can go that way and get Korean barbecue. And I love that, you know what I'm saying? And the people and the culture is beautiful. And so when I say, like, for example, like the Stories Matter group doesn't have as much influence on Disney as they once did, I don't mean that Disney's going to abandon diversity. I don't want anyone to misinterpret that.
Correct.
I just think it's going to be handled differently. I think diversity is still going to happen, and it's great. It should happen. I want to hear stories of immigrants, or, you know, I want to hear those stories. But I think it's going to be handled differently, where it's maybe done like kind of how Michael Eisner's era was done, where we had a diversity of films. We had Mulan, we had, you know, these diverse films. It wasn't just white characters, but it was handled differently. It wasn't maybe marketed a certain way where you know, and I think that's the approach I think they're going to go in going forward. The diversity, the inclusiveness will still be there. It's just the approach in which they do it will be different, I think, you know. So.
I too was born and raised in Los Angeles County. Lived in Orange County for a while myself as well.
Salt in the wound.
Yeah. Sorry, George, just rubbing it in. But my wife and I moved. We now live in Colorado. Colorado is, outside of downtown Denver, which we're in northern Colorado. It is.
Speaking of which, Jay, not to cut you off, for how many times that I've had a layover in Denver, you know. You should have been like the person I'd be hanging out with the most.
Totally. You need to call me next time. Next time I'll drive down and we'll go to lunch. But one of the things that my wife and I always say to people whenever they say, how are you guys liking Colorado? We go, we love it. But honestly, there's not enough diversity. There's too many white people. Right now, I don't say that because I dislike white people, because I'm a white person. Okay. Right. So, like, I'm not saying that because there's a problem with white people. I'm saying that because there's a level of beauty in diversity, right? Well, there's a level of beauty in the fact that we can all come together and do some really cool things. When we were putting together Death of a Bounty Hunter, that's a very diverse cast. Not because I felt like I needed to have some kind of statement about cool for us that we did such a diverse cast. It wasn't about that. It was that it made the story more interesting. We have the lead character in Death of a Bounty Hunter is a Korean cowboy, right? Wow. So, like, the fact that, like, why did we do that? Because we felt like this is an isolated character. He lives in, like, this old West it's kind of an old West, weird West. So it's like a sci-fi kind of setting in some ways. What would be an interesting way to isolate that character and make that character go through some of his arcs? Well, if you make him Korean in the Old West, and then everyone thinks he's Chinese and they're always calling him Chinese stuff, like, then that isolates him a little bit further. He doesn't feel like he can associate as much. And there's a bunch of reasons for why we did that. We brought in My buddy Tim Jim Lim. That's his name. He has 3 names that all rhyme. It's awesome.
Is that his actual, like, his legal name?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. We brought him in to play the lead character, and he added something to the story that I would have never thought of. I'm working with him. I'm going like, okay, so the reason we made this character Korean are these reasons. But tell me about how when you come into this role to play the voice of this character, what are you bringing, right? Like, what? Because I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be Korean. So what are you bringing? And he goes, oh, I want to talk to you about what I'm bringing. And he goes, there's a whole history of being Korean. They even have a word for it, about being like a person in a different setting that's not your setting, and the potential anger that can well up inside you because you're kind of marginalized, right? And I'm like, dude, you just made the character 100 times better than it would have been, right?
Absolutely.
Because you bring your experience, I bring my experience. There's a little bit of me in that character, just a little bit of Tim in that character. There's a little bit of a lot of people in that character. So my point is that
it's better to use a Korean guy than a boring ass white guy.
Yes.
In that case, yes. But I think the stories matter is accurate, but it requires complex discussions.
Right.
It requires the knowledge of a lot of different people speaking into this. And then maybe as opposed to condemning the character, maybe you could do a positive write-up about how your thinking about that character has changed over time, and how these kind of things always bugged me when I was a little girl watching Tinkerbell, but this is how I've learned to think about her as an adult. And this is how I've learned, like those kind of things I think would be more powerful than just saying like erase from history. That's a non-nuanced way of looking at things.
Right.
And I think that we can be more nuanced in our approaches. And I hope that Disney will embrace that. I think Disney has already started to embrace that to a degree, as you've pointed out multiple times, OG. And I think that's a much more positive way for us to look at things as we move forward. So that's my take.
And they kind of already did a little bit of that take too with Elemental. How Ember's family came over and kind of restarted a whole new life, and her father was able to do what his father couldn't give him, so he wants to give to Ember. And then you have these two kind of star-crossed lovers, so to speak, kind of like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing, where you have these two elements that in all actuality they shouldn't work together, but yet at the same time
they love each other.
They do. Yeah, it's like that was genius. And actually, if you watch, I forget, I don't know if it's on Disney Plus or if it was on YouTube, but the backstory of Elemental from director Peter Sohn, of how he incorporated his life with his parents coming over as immigrants and how he incorporated that into the storyline. It's very, very uplifting, very intriguing. And actually, Peter actually ended up liking one of my photos on Twitter of meeting the Elemental characters at Disneyland. So I thought that was kind of cool.
So that was pretty recently, huh? That's awesome.
Let me double down on that for a minute, because there's even more to Elemental that I love what you're talking about, George. It's just so true. And there's even more to that story, because Ember's family doesn't really want her dating somebody who's not part of the fire group, right? They're kind of against that. And what happens so you can have diversity can occur in two different ways. Diversity can occur in a segmented way, where people start to see all of the things they dislike about the other people in their vicinity, and that can cause segmentation, it can cause resentment, it can cause clashes. Or there is, to use now I know somebody in the comments will say the melting pot analogy is not great for some reason, but my point is when you bring down those walls, when you bring down the walls that different cultural aspects that may not get along with each other, different views on how things should be done, there's a whole thing about like one of my friends who is a missionary in China. I can't remember who this was, but my friend was a missionary in China, and they were doing they were stamping visas or something, right? And there's just this crowd of people around the window, like handing visas over to the people, and they're stamping them. And the lady behind the counter goes, "Hang on, everybody. There's an American over there, and the American will never get their pass stamped if we don't like invite them over to come get." Because in that area there was not a line, right? If we were in Germany, there'd be a long line, and it'd be everyone lined up. So every culture has a different way of behaving, and those ways of behaving are not necessarily bad or good. They are different, and so that can cause tensions among us. But if there's a place where we can get to where we understand one another, it's much better. It's much better situation. So I think that's when the melting pot becomes a positive analogy, right? When we all start to learn from each other and we all get better because of it. And that's what happens in Elemental. That's like literally what happens in Elemental. So
well said. No, exactly. And I like on a personal level, like my ex girlfriend, we were together for a long time, long-term relationship, right? And like she was Vietnamese, you know, and it was interesting being with her for so long. It opened me up to like Vietnamese culture in a big way, like stuff I never knew existed, you know. And you know, there were so many years with her where, like, unfortunately, you know, her grandmother passed away and stuff like that. Where it's like, I got to experience how they grieve. You know, I got to experience their food, food that I was introduced to with her. That I'm still, even though we're not together anymore, it's still some of my favorite food. You guys have ever had banh mi? It's a Vietnamese sandwiches. Yeah. Banh mi is amazing. I love it. I had no idea about banh mi. No idea before I met her, and now it's one of my favorite things. I'll DoorDash banh mi all the time. I love it, but it's like you learn these things. You learn how, like I said, how they grieve when they lose a loved one and things like that. And it's like it makes you. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. It makes you a better person, a more well-rounded person, as opposed to just staying in your bubble with people that are like you. You know, it's like, okay, it's good to branch out. It's good to learn about someone else's life, someone else's culture. You know what I'm saying? What they do and what have you. And it's for me, personally, I think it's more. I just think it's way more interesting. Go ahead, George.
No, and I was going to say I can actually relate to that too. Like even with Elemental, because with my ex, you know, if we were elements, I always take myself as earth. She was water. Together we made mud. You know, so it's like
that's great. That's great. That's fantastic. But George, witty George. But it's interesting. It's fascinating stuff. But yeah, this Tinkerbell story is fascinating. Now we'll see. Look, to be fair, there are people that are reporting that like this is because of the problematic element, and that's fine. You know, if that's what people believe, or that's the perspective they see it as, I respect that. That's fine. You know, I personally don't see it that way. Now here's the thing though, I'm an open-minded person, and so right now I don't think the evidence is there that this has been removed in Florida because of problematic reasons. I think it's a weak argument to make, right? But let's say Disneyland starts to remove their meet and greet. Let's say the Disney Plus Tinkerbell movies start to vanish. Okay. All right. Let's say there's no more Tinkerbell and Happily Ever After. They replace it with Baymax. Okay. Then we have now you have an argument. I think now you have a case to be made. Like, look, you know what? Is Tinkerbell thing after Tinkerbell thing being removed? Yeah, Disney's probably removing it for problematic elements. But right now, where we stand right now, I just don't see it. I just don't see the evidence there. And California, I mean, California's a blue state, you know, like, it's way more blue than Florida right now. You know what I'm saying? and Disney has control of both resorts, California and Florida, right? If they thought this character was super problematic, I think both would have been gone. You know, just like Tiana's, how they converted Splash to Tiana, I think it would have been the same situation. So, you know,
you brought up something earlier, OG, that I think is worthy of talking about.
Sure.
Whenever you think about these things from a motivation standpoint, so let's just think about this for a second. Disney has certain motivations, right? The Stories Matter group has certain motivations. Corporate Disney has certain motivations. The people who report on Disney have certain motivations. So if you break that down, like if Tinkerbell suddenly leaves from the property and you're going to write a story about that, and you're a news outlet and you want people to click on that story, because guess what your advertising revenue is? You make money when people click. Right. You don't make money when people don't click. What are you going to come up with as the reason? right? You're going to drum up some past stuff and say, clearly, this is the first step in the Disney dropping the hammer on Tinkerbell. Now, why? Because that's going to get more clicks. It's going to get a video from OG55. It's going to get more attention. If it was just, oh yeah, we actually the actress who plays Tinkerbell for us she can't do it anymore. She got a better job over at Universal, and we haven't replaced her yet. And we need somebody that kind of looks like Tinkerbell, and we just haven't found that person yet. That's getting no clicks.
None.
And that's how it used to be, even before social media. With news articles like in magazines, People Magazine, the National Enquirer. People weren't buying those magazines off the shelves for something positive or happy. It was like you had to see like the main article that something was like faltering in destruction in order to say, you know what, I'm interested in reading this, but I don't have time to read the whole thing standing here in the middle of aisle 7. So I'll buy it and take it home with me.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, you had to put Bat Boy on the cover because we all had to know where's Bat Boy. There's a half human, half Bat Boy. Oh my gosh, pick that up quickly, buy it.
Yeah, no, well said. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, absolutely. But stay tuned tomorrow for an OG55 video about lizard people take over the Disney board.
Facts. That's facts.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild. I love you, gentlemen. Really, really interesting, thoughtful conversation. And again, look, we're all presented with the same information in regards.
Wait, I'm sorry. You said lizard people taking over the Walt Disney Company? Huh.
Yeah,
the board. I didn't know. I didn't know my ex-mother-in-law was part of that organization.
Yeah, she is. Absolutely. But interesting conversation. Yeah, and like I said, like if you think that what is presented in this article points to that it's because it's problematic, that's fine. You have a right to that opinion, and we disagree respectfully. But right now, that's kind of where I stand. But good conversation overall. And George, if you can just kind of let everybody know where they can find you and your lizard mother-in-law on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55. Not sure how much longer, but with citrus corn.
Right,
with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Was she an Italian lizard, George, or no? You don't know?
Polish.
Polish lizard. Oh, that's great. I love it. Fantastic. Jay, always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure. I love how, Jay, we've had you on the show a lot lately, and I want to continue that trend. I want to have you on again very soon.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to come back on as soon as I can. I would love talking to you guys. Yes, you can find me at How Stories Work with Jay Sherer on YouTube. It's the best place to find me. If you want to chat with me about stories, it's the best place to leave me a comment. Let me know what kind of stories you want me to break down. Be happy to do that. And I love talking to you guys about this kind of stuff. I think it's really, really healthy and good, and I hope that people enjoy it. And let's face it, like I can imagine that we're talking about Tinkerbell 10 years from now because her skirt is too short. Her dress is too short. I mean, this is a cyclical thing. Somebody's going to have some kind of other problem. So I appreciate you guys talking it through with us. And I hope we get some good comments in the chat below. So leave us some good comments. And thanks for having me on.
Actually, Polish, Dutch, and Welsh. That's
okay. Fantastic.
If there's two things that I can't stand, guys, it's people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch. That is not my original joke. That's from what's his name? The British guy. Before there was Harry Potter, there was
Doctor Who?
No, what's the name of the guy? The Michael Myers. playing the British guy.
Oh, Austin Powers.
Austin Powers. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
Congrats, Austin Powers, for that joke. One of my favorite jokes of all time.
Oh, now I remember. Michael Caine.
Michael Caine.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's Michael Caine. Such a good joke.
But absolutely comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today. Just keep it civil. You know, if you disagree with us, that's cool. If you agree with us, that's also cool. We'd love to hear from you. Comment down below with everything we talked about today regarding Tinkerbell, Elemental, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.